Hey yo, listen.
Drop it low to the flow. Oh.
Like it like that.
Yeah. Oh. Are you ready for this?
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're looking into something I think a lot of you are familiar with. It's the aftermath of the U.S. TikTok ban being lifted.
Right.
And, we all remember the drama surrounding the ban, but now users are going back to TikTok.
Yeah.
Like crazy.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about what's driving this resurgence, and is this really the end of it? Or is this just the beginning of a whole other chapter?
Yeah, no, I mean, this whole thing, it touches on so many different aspects. We're talking about addictive algorithms and online communities and international relations, data security.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
So let's start with the most obvious thing. TikTok is back, and people are going back like crazy. What is it about this app that is drawing users back? I mean, there were other platforms that came up when it was banned, so why not just stick with those?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned the algorithm.
Yeah.
It's not just about liking something. It's about how the recommendation system gets you hooked in a way.
So it's like it knows what you want to see before you even know you want to see it.
Exactly. And studies have shown that when you see this type of personalized content, you get like a dopamine release in the brain.
Wow.
Similar to like gambling or video games.
Really?
So it's like this cycle of anticipation and reward that makes it really hard to stop.
So it's like a siren song that's bringing everyone back in.
That's a great way to put it. And this is something that other platforms have tried to copy and it hasn't really worked. Also, TikTok, it has a really specific online community, and it's all about participation and shared experience.
Yeah, that's true. You're not just like watching things. You're part of trends. You're doing challenges, duets, all these things.
Exactly. And I think that goes back to just a basic human need. We all want to belong. We all want to have these social connections, especially now with, everyone's online. It's hard to find that sometimes. And so TikTok gives that feeling in a way that's hard to get from other places.
I can see that it's like everyone's in on the joke. Like it's this massive collaborative inside joke that's just going all the time.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing that the platforms that popped up during the ban, they couldn't copy that.
Yeah, you can't just manufacture that overnight.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people had already spent so much time on TikTok, they built up their followers and their content. And starting over is tough.
Yeah, I get that you found your tribe, you've built your digital home, you don't want to leave.
Right.
But let's be real. The ban is lifted, but is it really over? I mean, there's still a lot of uncertainty about TikTok's future in the U.S.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, just because there's an executive order doesn't mean that it's a done deal. This company is walking a tightrope right now, legally and politically.
So even though people are back on the app making their videos, could it just vanish again?
It's possible. I mean, this order could be challenged in court. Congress is still looking at it, and then there's the whole thing with the U.S. and China.
Right.
So, yeah, there are a lot of things that could still happen.
Okay, so it sounds like it's not over yet. We're kind of holding our breath to see what happens next.
Exactly.
And speaking of things that make people nervous, let's talk about that big elephant in the room, data security.
Right.
And those concerns about TikTok's connection to China. I mean, that was a big part of the ban in the first place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's still a big concern. The fear is that all the data that TikTok collects from its users, like browsing history location data, even biometric information, could end up in the hands of the Chinese government.
Right, and that's a lot of information.
Yeah, and this fear is tied to China's approach to internet regulation and surveillance.
So what are some of the solutions that are being talked about to address these concerns? I know I've heard about data localization, keeping U.S. user data on U.S. soil, and then also increasing algorithm transparency, like letting us see what's going on behind the scenes of those realistic options.
Yeah, those are definitely some of the things that are being considered. Data localization basically means storing that U.S. user data on servers in the U.S., and that could make it harder for the Chinese government to directly access it.
So it's like building a digital wall around the data. But couldn't the Chinese government still put pressure on ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, to just hand over the data?
That's a good point, and it shows that just data localization by itself might not be enough. That's why some experts are saying that maybe there should be a completely independent U.S. company that manages the data and makes sure it follows U.S. privacy laws.
So that would be like taking the data completely out of ByteDance's hands.
Yeah, it would be a big change, but it might be what's needed to really address those security concerns and build trust with users and lawmakers in the U.S.
What about that algorithm transparency? If we could see how TikTok's algorithm works, wouldn't that help to reduce some of those worries about manipulation or bias?
Transparency is really important for trust and accountability right now. The algorithm is like this black box. We don't know how it decides which videos we see.
Right.
And that makes people suspicious.
But how do you make something as complex as an algorithm easy for the average person to understand?
It's a challenge for sure, but there are ways to do it without giving away all the secret code. Maybe TikTok could release reports explaining how the recommendations work, or let independent researchers take a look at the algorithm to see if there's any bias or manipulation.
So kind of open it up a little bit.
Exactly. It would give us a better understanding of what's happening without revealing all of the company's secrets.
Okay, so we've talked about data localization, third-party data management, algorithm, transparency. These all sound like they could be steps in the right direction. But I think some people would say, well, all social media companies collect tons of data, not just TikTok. So why is TikTok being singled out?
That's true. All social media platforms collect user data, and there are definitely valid privacy concerns with all of them. But TikTok's connection to the Chinese government adds a whole other level of complexity. It's not just about data privacy, it's about national security. Right. It's about the possibility that the data could be used for something beyond just recommending videos.
Exactly.
So even if TikTok does all of these things, is it really enough to completely address those concerns?
That's the big question. I think there will always be some level of mistrust surrounding a company that's owned by China and operating in the U.S., especially with the current global political climate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
So what does all of this mean for the average person who uses TikTok? Should they be worried about their data? Should they delete the app?
It's a personal decision. Everyone has to weigh the risks and benefits for themselves.
Right.
If you're concerned about data privacy, maybe you limit how much information you share on the platform, or you explore other social media options.
So it's about being an informed user and making choices that you're comfortable with.
Exactly. And it brings us to another important point, the impact of this ban, and then the ban being lifted on the bigger digital landscape. This whole situation is setting a precedent. It's changing how we think about data security, algorithm transparency, and the role of the government in regulating these big tech companies.
Yeah, it's like we're watching a giant experiment in digital governance unfold, and millions of users are right in the middle of it.
That's a good way to put it. And it highlights how complex these issues are. Individual freedom, national security, the power of technology, they're all intertwined.
So we've covered the return of TikTok, the legal uncertainties, the data security issues. Where do we go from here in this deep dive? We've talked about TikTok coming back and all the legal stuff and all the data concerns, but there's another part to this whole thing, right? Like the cultural impact.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
TikTok, it's more than just an app for funny videos.
Definitely. I mean, it's become this huge cultural force. It's setting trends. It's helping people build careers, even boosting businesses.
Yeah, like how many times have you seen something on TikTok and then suddenly it's everywhere?
Right.
A recipe, a fashion trend, a dance. It's like it knows what's going to be popular before it happens.
It's really interesting to see how TikTok has become like this tastemaker. You know, it influences what people watch online, but also what they buy, what they wear, what they eat, even what they read.
But yeah, like book talk.
Exactly. Books that nobody was talking about are suddenly bestsellers just because people on TikTok are recommending them.
It's word of mouth, but like on a massive scale.
Yeah, and it's all amplified by that algorithm we were talking about and the fact that so many people are using the app.
And for the people making those videos, it's a whole new world.
Yeah.
You can go from making videos at home to having a huge following, getting brand deals, even starting your own business.
It's really changed the whole idea of what a creator is and what it means to be successful.
And it's not just the individual creators either. Small businesses. They're finding ways to use TikTok to reach new customers, show off their products, build their brands in ways they couldn't before.
It's giving them a chance to compete with the big companies, even if they don't have huge marketing budgets.
So the ban lift, it's not just about whether people can use the app. It's about all these ripple effects on culture, the economy, the whole future of content creation.
Yeah, it's a window into how powerful these platforms are, how we consume media now, and this constant struggle between individual freedom, national security, and technology.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the big things we should be thinking about as the story continues?
Well, I think the main thing is that TikTok is back, but we don't know for sure if it's here to stay. There could be more legal battles and political pressure.
It's not over yet.
And even though people are excited to be back on TikTok, those data security concerns, they're still there.
Yeah, that's not going away.
And we've seen how important that feeling of personalization and community is for people online.
TikTok really nailed that
Yeah,
part.
the algorithm and the whole culture of collaboration, that's a big part of why it's been so successful.
And this whole thing, it's really highlighted those bigger challenges we're facing with technology, globalization, and data privacy.
Yeah. These issues, they're not going away, so it's important to keep talking about them.
So to leave everyone with something to think about, how do we balance individual freedom and national security in a world where technology is everywhere and the world is so interconnected?
It's a tough question with no easy answers, but it's a question we need to keep asking.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive into the TikTok ban lift. It's been a fascinating conversation, but remember, this is just the beginning. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and stay curious until next time.
Are you ready for this? Oh,
Like it like that. Hey, yo, listen.
drop it low to the flow. Oh,
Like it like that.
yeah. Oh, are you ready for this?